begin the sermon, we actually live in Grand Rapids and are just here for 4 days. But it's great to be here again. And when Christian and Jody were here, I think I supplied 3 times maybe. I don't know, but somewhere around that. And it's wonderful to be back. I haven't celebrated in an Episcopal church because I'm old and long retired for over a year, and one of my colleagues said, "Oh, it's just like getting back on a bicycle. The only trouble is I never could ride a bicycle well." But my wife Deirdre is here about the 3rd or 4th row from the back on your right, and our dear friend Pat Allen is beside her. Begin with a poem called "The Sower and the Seed Revisited," written by a woman named Barbara Messner, priest of the Church of Australia, in a cycle of Sunday poems. The sower gracefully distributes seed. It is strange how indiscriminate the aim, as though each destination was the same, on path or field, in stones or thorny weed. The sower knows that birds might need to feed, and hardy plants can rocky corners claim. And if the field grows thistles, there's no blame, for prickly plants have equal rights to breed. If soil produces many stalks or few, if winds sow interlopers in the grain, it may be something precious springs up new. For all is worthy, if not linked to gain. The one who sows delights 100-fold, if one small twisted plant dares brave the cold. And I think that while some might argue, even myself, with a bit of the ecological theories there, the theology is it's all about God's provident grace and love spread and sprinkled and thrown indiscriminately. How do we as a culture, as a people, measure the value of life? And I don't mean just human life, but all of life. Is it the wealth that individuals have amassed? Is it the status that he or she has achieved? Is it the things an individual owns, the houses, cars, furniture, clothes, and so on? These are all one-time things, to be bought, possessed, and used up. I don't come into the world with them, nor do I leave. In contrast to that, in today's parable from Jesus, the value of the seed is that it carries with it the possibility of reproduction and of new and continuing, ongoing life. The seed has potential possibilities and life beyond this moment, beyond our lifetime. Today's parable is about the sower, God, and the seed. It is not about us. It's about a generous and recklessly messy, profligate God who sows his seed, her word, everywhere. It's about the reign of God. The kingdom of God is like that. That is generous and messy and profitable. And it's beyond our control. And we get caught up in the details of our lives and the details of our news, and we lose sight, I know I do, lose sight of God's enormous love, profligate grace. In fact, as Christ's disciples, our response to the sower and the seed needs to be one of utter praise and thanksgiving. Isaiah 55, a passage many are familiar with, says, everyone who thirsts comes to the waters. You know, by Crystal Lake, by Lake, and don't we do that? By Lake Michigan, by the Platte River where we're staying, and perhaps from the first line of today's gospel, you know, we picture Jesus in the boat out here on Crystal Lake, and all of us gathered on the beach as he speaks. And you that have no money, come buy and eat. Come buy wine and milk, without money and without price. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, which is not seed, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me, and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. So God is so generous. How completely contrary to our cultural values, in which everything has its limits and has a price, and money becomes our God, and where everything is competitive and joyless, because, you know, if I win, then somebody else must lose. That's not the message of today's parable. That's not the message of God's gospel. And so we become joyless, without thanksgiving or praise. Our response to the sower and the seed needs to be one of praise and thanksgiving, as we become one with Christ, the sower, ourselves. It is his generative word that God and the sower sows everywhere as seed. As Jesus says, listen, let anyone with ears listen. Prepare our soil, compost it. Too often, we don't trust God's reckless generosity. So we try to control this, you know, pensions and insurance and all sorts of other securities and other ways. On the way to church this morning, we drove by a little garden with obviously, from the big orange blossoms, squash growing under the leaves. And indeed, it's almost too much. Regardless of cost, however, God sows the seeds of God's kingdom generously. It is beyond our control. I think of, and it's not just that God sows his words, of course, in church. It is, and within church. It is not just that God sows them in the scriptures and the sermon. I remember in seminary one day during the depth of winter, when a friend of mine was greatly depressed. This was, in fact, shortly before the Episcopal Church began ordaining women. And at the end of the Eucharist, we said, let us go forth in the name of Christ, love and serve the Lord. Thanks be to God. And I felt God sending me, pushing me, kicking me, whatever, to go up to the dorm room and deliver to my friend Mary Jo a crucifix. Many years ago now, we at my former parish, Holy Cross in Kentwood, small church, we were depressed because so many of our small number had just moved away. Besides our anxiety and concern for the future of Holy Cross, we were dealing with all of our own abandonment issues. Then an active member who herself was just passing through her life transitions said to us one day, quote, you aren't looking at this the right way. Look at it this way. That Holy Cross at St. Philip's is preparing all these people who pass through, who visit, who move on for ministry to the greater church and the wider world, wherever we may go. Unquote. And that helped. God sows seed without our knowing where it lands or how much fruit it bears. Christians of other times and places whose lives are so much shorter than ours and whose possibilities and who possess so many fewer things than we, hold everything more lightly and can share and use them to God's glory more readily than we. For a little while we had a number of Sudanese lost boys in our congregation. And they wanted bicycles. They had just arrived. They wanted bicycles. So parishioners had very long. The bicycles were all missing, stolen, forgotten, whatever. And some of our people, furrowed our brows and were well, we made all that effort. And they hadn't kept the bicycles and so on and so forth. But they had a different attitude, being from the Sudan, that life is precious, but things are not, because they didn't have things. And so their attitude was that those were just things, and we could learn from them. The 20th century theologian Reinhold Niebuhr once wrote, "Nothing worth achieving is ever accomplished in our lifetime. Therefore we live by faith and hope." In Romans 8 today, Paul speaks of the priority of our connectedness to God and to fellow humans. Through his sacrifice, Jesus was the great connector who fulfilled the whole law, overcoming the disconnectedness of our deliberate disobedience. God's grace connected with Paul's faith, and Paul became the embodiment of a living sacrifice as he shared God's reconnecting love with peoples all across the Greco-Roman world, the Mediterranean. In city after city, the disconnected opened themselves to Christ's offer of grace and forgiveness, spreading the seeds. The image of God within was restored to many communities, true communities of faith, and took root, some multiplying a miraculous 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Today, Christ's followers on every continent experience this legacy of grace and the joy of knowing that we are children of God and joint heirs with Christ. There are many different cultures, even within our own culture. My first parish, where I served as an assistant out of seminary almost 50 years ago, sometimes live by their 11th commandment. Never alienate or use up capital, like so many do in our culture. When I arrived at Holy Cross in Kentwood, we had nothing in the bank except debts. We finished the year with maybe $1,000 in our account, period. One of our vestry members said, and I quote, "The church has no business with that kind of money. Who are we going to give it away to?" Can we continue again and again to pour ourselves out like seed for others, generously, recklessly, messily? How do we measure the value of life? In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. In response, please stand if you are able, confessing our faith, saying together the Nicene Creed. We believe in one God, Father Almighty,